Hey everybody, it's Web Series Wednesday here on LonsTV, so let's jump right into it. Today I want to talk about a show that's maybe, a little bit lesser known. I was actually turned on to it by a friend of mine I follow on Twitter, Chris Miller, who tweeted it out. I guess he knows the cast or some people involved with it. It's called the Baristas, so I just took a look at it because he tweeted it out, and and I liked it, and I wanted to talk a bit about it because I haven't seen as much about it, around the web so far, and I thought it deserved a little more attention. It is a comedy about the employees of a coffee shop in Pittsburgh. The coffee shop is called the Affogato, and it's actually a real place. It's in Pittsburgh, and it's a coffee shop called the Affogato. The location is real. It's not a documentary. The show's actually, it's a sitcom, so it's all fictional characters, and actually, it's a spin-off of a long-running web series that I have not seen called Something to Be Desired, and apparently that show also was set in the same area of Pittsburgh, and a lot of the characters and the locations were the Affogato. So it's sort of taking that one location and some of the characters and then giving them their own show, which is, kind of an interesting idea. Definitely something that has happened on network TV. Little trivia for you, take a little moment away from the Baristas review. Did you know, I always blow people's minds with this, did you know that Perfect Strangers had a spin-off, Family Matters, and that the elevator operator from Perfect Strangers, it was about her family, was the show, the Winslows on Family Matters. So there you go. Back to Baristas. So there's definitely polish in the writing and pacing here. You can tell Justin Kownacki, or Kanacki, I think it's Kownacki, Kownacki. He created and produced Something to Be Desired, and then this new show, and you can tell he's written for this format and a lot of these actors before. There's just a confidence and a comfort level. It feels like the sort of tone and pace of the banter is sort of all worked out in advance, and these characters are very comfortable, sort of, there's a good deal of rapport here, and with a newer cast, you would think it would take them a few weeks to really work on, like, what everybody sort of places and how to sort of rhythmically time all of their routines together, and this one flows really naturally. You can tell these people have been at it before, so right there off the bat, it's like, it's worth watching just because of that level of polish. It really feels like an ensemble, a true ensemble. Then there's also just, good moments and little funny bits. It's very, very dialogue heavy. So it's a really good thing that these people are so good at kind of playing the lines off of each other and making it feel, like snappy. Because otherwise this would seem like a real slog. I mean, it's over 9 minutes long, and it really is. It's one location, and it's just a lot of talking. So if the dialogue wasn't as well written as it is, and if these actors weren't sort of so good at kind of getting the lines out and keeping things moving, it could have been very weighed down. It's also a bit claustrophobic. I mean, they definitely get points for realism shooting a show about a coffee shop in a small coffee shop, but it is a small coffee shop, and it really feels like on camera it feels even more closed in. And so actually, and another odd thing they've done, considering that they have this fairly small space to work with, is that they've packed it full of characters. I mean, there's a ton of characters in this pilot episode. So many people are actually around that there are times when a character has to have like a line, like a little button on the end of a conversation, and they'll actually kind of have to like sidle into the shot to deliver their line and then kind of back out. Like if it was on Ren and Stimpy, you'd get a little like sound effect like, like they're popping in from off camera. And you would just think, like, why have so many, like, have fewer characters, and then the space itself that you're in makes more sense? Because obviously they've shot here before. They're aware of the spacing that they have to work with. So that seemed kind of odd. It's certainly not necessary to move the story forward, which is, rather simple. And I get that they want it to seem like, well, there's the people who work there, and then there's people visiting them, and then there's the regulars and the customers who are there, and it adds to the realism of the scenario, and that's great, but you just don't really have that much room to work with. And the sheer number of characters, there's a couple disadvantages to that. You don't get to know too many of them that well because there's so many people competing for space. There's 12 characters introduced in this episode that I counted. And it's only 9 minutes and some change long, which means they have less than a minute to introduce every character. So you get 4 baristas, Sam, Madison, Gary, and Deirdre, and they work there. They're the regulars. Plus, there's a new barista that the plot of this first episode is how they come to have a 5th barista working for them. And then there's Sam's girlfriend Astrid and her sister Aubrey. And then there's regulars who are also there, like Amy, Glenn, Rich, Scott, and Tabitha all like stop in to get their coffee. So 12 characters. I mean, I feel like after watching the show, I can remember maybe 3 people's personalities. And everybody else just kind of blends together. They're all kind of snarky. And there's just too many of them. You can't possibly get to know them all. I'm sure we'll get to know them more as the series goes on, but it just really seems like biting off a lot in a pilot episode to try to introduce so many characters, and you probably would be better served by spending a little bit more time on just the few central ones and then opening up the ensemble later. Like, Springfield in The Simpsons is huge, but they've had 20 years to, like, develop that, and the first season was really about the family more than anyone else. The tagline for the show is comedy with room for cream, and I think they're taking that literally, that there's a general attitude about the show that it's not like in a huge rush to get anywhere. It's not like a propulsive narrative, and it's not really worrying so much about arcing all these characters and introducing them with like a clear through line. It's really just this kind of very laid back, sort of, realistic, dialogue-y, bantery sort of show. And that sort of touches on the last point I'd like to make, which is one of the things I did really like about it, which is it has a very retro 90s kind of feel. It's very 90s nostalgia in an odd way. It makes sense because 80s nostalgia was so big a few years ago. 90s nostalgia is the next thing that's going to come back, which of course has I have a soft spot for 90s nostalgia, both because that was the era I came of age and because my personal style never really graduated from like flannels that you haven't washed in a couple weeks. So that was like the perfect time, for me and my sensibility. But like everything, pop culture back then, it was like the slacker concept was out there, and you had stuff like Reality Bites, where it was this very like laid back, can't be bothered for like too much effort in the narrative, and it's just people, man, being people, dude, just hanging out. So it's got that sort of Reality Bites, I think I said is a touchstone already, or like Singles, I guess would be another example. That 90s sort of sensibility of like it's buttoned down, or it's not buttoned down, it's loose and it's sort of hanging together, and it hasn't washed its hair in a couple days. And I mean that in the best way possible, that it just feels like Friends, and it's very natural, and it's fun to watch. And like I said, it's pretty well done. So it's called The Baristas. You can find it at thebaristas.com, and I'll link it below. It's an interesting show. It's only had 1 episode so far, and it was actually a Kickstarter production, which is interesting. The people behind Something to Be Desired wanted to do a new show, and they raised the funds for this from the old show's fans on Kickstarter, which is cool to see. So check it out. I enjoyed it. That's it for this episode of LonsTV, and I will see you all back here tomorrow, and stay tuned every Wednesday for reviews of new web series right here on the show.